It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This message is brought to you by Hotels.com. Every day, thousands of people book trips on Hotels.com that you will later hate like on social media. What's a hate like? It's when your friend Kyle posts an envy-worthy vacay photo and you like it, even though you kind of hate it. It's not that you hate Kyle. It's that you hate that he's on an awesome trip while you're sitting in a bathroom stall at work. Don't hate like Kyle's trip. Book your own with Hotels.com and get rewarded basically everywhere. Hotels.com. Be there, get rewarded.
Here's the Bills' latest pick.
With the 9th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select Ed Oliver, defensive tackle, Houston. Josh Allen, quarterback, Wyoming. Tre'Davious White, defensive back, LSU. Tremaine Edmonds, linebacker, Virginia Tech.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I am your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Tuesday to you. I hope you had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. I certainly did. Enjoyed celebrating my best friend Kyle Crabb's wedding up in Pennsylvania this past weekend, and enjoyed some time with the family on Memorial Day. And good to be back in the office today, talking Buffalo Bills here with you on a Twitter Tuesday. It's your show. It's the day where you tell me what you want me to talk about, dictating the conversation, and you can do that every single week by sending me your Twitter Tuesday takes and questions to me on Twitter. At the Joe Marino is my handle, and the hashtag is Twitter Tuesday. You can also send an email. Lots of people do this. The email address is joe@thedraftnetwork.com. Do want to tell you that today's show is brought to you in part by Hotels.com. Don't hate like your friend's trip. Book your own with Hotels.com and get rewarded basically everywhere. Hotels.com. Be there, do that, get rewarded. Would also like to send a thank you to Untuck It for sponsoring Locked On. If you are looking for a great Father's Day idea, their shirts are specifically designed to look great untucked and feel comfortable at work or on the weekend. No tucking or tailoring required. Go to untuckit.com. Our promo code is NFL to get 20% off. And a reminder that you can get the Locked On Bills podcast on the brand new podcasting app Himalaya, as well as Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify. And when you get in your car, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Bills. All right, let's get into our Twitter Tuesday takes, comments, and questions. The first one today comes from Andrew Kennedy. He says, "Hey, Joe, my question for this week is about contracts. Xavier Howard's contract scares me as it's potentially worth over $15 million per season. Is that something you see as an outlier or a market being reset?" Of course, Xavier Howard being the Miami Dolphins cornerback that just signed the big extension to stay with the Dolphins. Andrew continues to say, "And do you think Tre White, if he continues to perform, will be looking for something like that? Tre worries me because you can barely tell he's a Buffalo Bill by looking at his social media. Lastly, do you think the Bills staff will look to re-sign him to big money if necessary or let him walk?" Andrew, good questions here. A lot of good discussion points we can get into. First of all, with Xavier Howard, I think this is one of those deals where at every position, whenever the next young good player is up for a contract, they always sign market resetting deals, right? I mean, you see it across the board. Mitch Morse, the Bills center, he reset the center market this year. C.J. Mosley, the linebacker the Jets signed from the Ravens, he reset that market. Of course, the example that you gave, Xavier Howard, he reset the market for cornerbacks. And so I think that's just the next example of, hey, it doesn't mean he's the best cornerback of all time. Doesn't mean he's the best cornerback in the game right now or player at that position in the game right now. The next good young one to sign the deal is usually going to be the one that resets and redefines the market. So I think Xavier Howard got the deal that you would expect him to. I'm friends with a lot of Dolphins fans, which I know is kind of weird, but they're happy about that deal. They don't have any issues with committing over $15 million per season to Xavier Howard. And to bring Tre White into this discussion, here's how I'd answer that, Andrew. I hope to God the Bills give Tre White that extension, because that would mean that he's continued to ascend as a player and prove that he's worthy of top cornerback money. And I think through 2 seasons, he's certainly done a good job of putting himself on that course. Now, Tre, in order for him to be really considered, I think, an upper echelon cornerback in the NFL, he's going to have to make some more big plays. I thought he did a good job of that in his rookie year. You can point to several instances: the Tampa Bay game, the Atlanta game, the Dolphins game, where he made game-changing plays that led to Bills wins. Now, we didn't see that as much last year, and I thought the biggest thing with Tre White last year in terms of where he needed to improve was penalties. He got called for some stuff down the field in coverage, and then just some missed tackles in the run game. I thought those were the 2 big issues that Tre White had in his sophomore season. So I'm looking for him to put everything together in year 3, looking for him to make more big plays, kind of refine that 2017 form, and then put himself in position where the Bills are paying him the highest deal that's ever went to a cornerback in the history of the league. That's the goal. That's what you want when you draft a player in the first round, is when the opportunity comes to give him that extension, there's no hesitation. You give him that deal and reset the market. So I know that there's business and economics and value and all that type of stuff, but cornerbacks are becoming – they're not becoming. They are a premium position in the NFL, and so those top guys are going to command those big dollars. And hopefully, we're talking about the Bills giving massive money to Tre White in a couple of years. Next one comes from Bryce Clark. This was a fun one, Bryce. He said, "What would be a ballpark guess on the stats of the rookies?" Also, for all of us Bills fans, what's your opinion on Josh Allen looking good in shorts? I went through all of the Bills picks, and I have stat predictions for you, Bryce, but I want to get to the Josh Allen looking good in shorts. I mean, as I record this podcast in the middle of the day on Tuesday, the Bills are literally in their second session of OTAs, like their 4th practice, and really the media's only had access to one of those practices. So, I mean, you don't want to hear anything other than he's looking good. I mean, that would be concerning if that wasn't the recap that we're getting. But, a big step forward for Josh is expected this season. And, I think probably, we certainly look back to the way he played after coming back from the injury last year against Jacksonville and how he played the rest of the season. Obviously, his physical skill set, his demeanor, how he's won the locker room, his work ethic, all of those things. But the thing that makes me most excited about Josh Allen in year 2 is that he is the guy from day 1. He gets all the first-team reps. Last year at this time, he's getting reps with the 3s, sometimes with the 2s, and occasionally with the 1s, as he's in this three-headed race between A.J. McCarron and Nate Peterman to be the Bills' starting quarterback. And so now you just have so much more time, so many more reps to build the chemistry with the starters, and for Josh to get the all the coaching that comes with being that number 1 guy. So there's a lot of reasons to be excited about Josh Allen, and you heard Brian Daboll in his presser today talk about the jump from year 1 to year 2, and I think we have a lot to be excited about when it comes to Josh Allen in 2019, his second season in the pros. Let's get to those stat predictions. And so I tried to be reasonable with every single one of these. Be curious to hear from you guys on Twitter. Let me know what you disagree with or what you thought maybe I was right on line with, or who I undersold or who I oversold. So we'll go one at a time here, and I'll give you some ballpark guesses, if you will, on the Bills rookies. All right, Ed Oliver, I have him 60 tackles, 6.5 sacks. I think that's reasonable. I think he'll get in the backfield a ton. One thing that he wasn't necessarily exceptional at in college was showing a complete pass rushing skill set. And so I think that, he does have double-digit sack upside, but I think this is going to be an important year for him to get the technique of rushing the passer down to complement his really exciting athletic skill set. Cody Ford, I got him at 12 starts at right tackle. As we're recording this podcast, he got the first reps today at right tackle in OTAs. So I think that bodes well for him being the primary starter there. I'm not sure if it'll be a right-away thing. The Bills have good depth at tackle. So I'll give him 12 starts, but it wouldn't surprise me that Sean McDermott has not been hesitant at all in 2 seasons as the Bills coach to start a rookie. So would not surprise me in the least for him to start all 16 games. Devin Singletary, this is a challenging one because he was a fairly high pick, but the Bills do have Frank Gore, LaShawn McCoy, TJ Yeldon, and you have to feel like this is going to be a true committee situation. But the meat and the potatoes of the carries are going to go to Gore and McCoy, in my opinion. So Devin Singletary will kind of pick up the scraps, but I think it's important for the Bills to get him some touches this year to see what they have, because we talk about the 2020 situation at running back, and it's Yeldon and Singletary, and the Bills need to know what they have in Singletary, and so giving him a chance to get some touches this year is going to be important to really measure what his potential could be. So I have him at 50 carries for 250 yards, 13 receptions for 201 yards. That's not a ton, but it's basically where I got those numbers from is it kind of mirrors Marcus Murphy's rushing output from last year, and it matches Chris Ivory's receiving output from last year. So that's kind of my thought process in that. Dawson Knox, a tight end, I have him at 25 receptions for 325 yards. He was tough. How the Bills are going to use these tight ends. Tyler Kroft coming back from injury. Dawson Knox certainly physically gifted, but how much of a role can he command in year one coming from a very elementary usage at Ole Miss? He's got a big jump ahead of him, so I don't know if he'll be flexed out a little bit and get some chances, but I thought that was a reasonable projection, 25 catches, 325 yards. Vashawn Joseph and Jaquan Johnson, linebacker for Joseph and the safety for Johnson. I have 12 tackles for Joseph, 18 tackles for Johnson. I think most of those are going to come in special teams. I think that's where they're going to make their hay in year one, learning the defense, proving themselves as hopefully reliable backups, but they're going to dress on Sundays and get chances to make plays on special teams. So I looked at really Lafayette Pitts numbers, and I looked at who was the other? Julian Stanford's numbers and Deion Lacey's numbers from last year to really kind of get these tackle numbers and where I think they'll fall. Daryl Johnson, I don't have anything. I put none. I don't think that he's going to dress and contribute this year. Tommy Sweeney, I have 4 receptions for 21 yards. I mean, it's just kind of difficult. I looked at Kari Lee's stats for the Bills over the last couple of years to get an idea, but I think that Tommy Sweeney's very much behind Kroft. He's behind Lee Smith. He's behind Dawson Knox, Jason Kroom. I just feel like he's on the bottom of the depth chart here. So it's hard to project him making all that much of an impact as a rookie, although I do like his ceiling as a very solid depth tight end for potentially a long time on this roster. Guys, let's talk about sex. Good sex. Remember the days when you were always ready to go. Now you can increase your performance and get that extra confidence in bed. Listen up. BlueChew.com. That's blue like the color blue. Blue Chew brings you the first chewable with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, so you know they work. You can take them anytime, day or night, even on a full stomach, and since they're chewable, they work up to twice as fast as a pill, so you can be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Blue Chew is prescribed online and shipped straight to your door in a discreet package, so no in-person doctor visits, no waiting in the pharmacy, and best of all, no more awkwardness. They're made in the USA, and since Blue Chew prepares and ships direct, they're cheaper than a pharmacy. Right now, we've got a special deal for our listeners. Visit BlueChew.com and get your first shipment free when you use our special promo code MLB. That's like Major League Baseball, MLB. Just pay $5 shipping. Again, that's BlueChew.com, Blue, B-L-U-E, Chew.com, promo code MLB to try it free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper, faster choice, and we thank them for sponsoring the podcast. Also want to remind you guys that you can get this show every day by subscribing to Locked On Bills on the new Himalaya podcast app. In an ever-expanding podcast world, you need Himalaya with their personally curated playlists and new features every day. Download Himalaya at your app store and subscribe to Locked On Bills. All right, let's move on to the next one here. This comes from Daniel Spritzen. He says, hey, Joe, thumbs up on the podcast. He's from Somerville, Massachusetts, so thank you. You keep me sane. I bet that's challenging being a Bills fan out there in Massachusetts. He says, I know a veteran center is important to a young quarterback. Can you give us the nuts and bolts of how this will help Josh? Help diagnosing plays and audibling at the line, etc. I love this question, Daniel. This is one of my favorites, I think, that I've had so far in doing Twitter Tuesday. And what I want to go to is an article that I read several years ago, back in 2016, actually. This was written by Brent Sobleski from Bleacher Report. And I want to read some of this to you because I thought this does a really good job of answering that question and really giving some player quotes that I thought were very useful in talking about the value of a good center. And this article is actually called Alex Mack is the most important Falcons player in Super Bowl 51. So it was written before the Falcons' disappointing loss to the Patriots in the Super Bowl, that they probably should have won that game. And so I'm going to read through this. Pay attention here because I think this does a better job of answering this question than I could. And I think that Mitch Morse to Josh Allen can be what Alex Mack was to Matt Ryan. And so here's what I want you to, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I want to read certain parts of it that I think do a good job answering the question. It says, in 2015, the Falcons featured 4 of the same starting offensive linemen as this season being 2016. Mack's addition is the only difference between that unit with an 8-8 record and this year's 11-5 Super Bowl squad. Mike Person started 14 games last season, but he never quite grasped the responsibilities of a center. With Mack over the ball, the Falcons averaged 20.1 yards more per game on the ground and 41.7 through the air. So that's an additional, almost 61 yards. How does one player make such a drastic difference in an offense that features the top MVP candidate in Matt Ryan and the lethal Julio Jones? In short, he changed how Ryan and the scheme operated. This is a quote here from Patrick DeMarco, who's actually on the Bills, right, as we all know. It says, we joke around with him being a genius. He understands the offense and knows football at another level. He's making all of our calls along the line, and that takes so much off Matt Ryan. Over the last few years, Matt had to make the Mike calls, tell the line what to do, and called hot routes. When Mack first arrived, he said, hey, Matt, you worry about the coverage. I got the protection. It's shown and taken so much off of Ryan's shoulders, he can now be himself and attack defenses. That's a hell of a quote, huh? Think about what insert Josh Allen for Matt Ryan and Mitch Morse from Alex Mack, and that should get you pretty excited. A couple more paragraphs I want to read here. It says, with fewer responsibilities, Ryan's game elevated. He set career highs with a 69.9 completion percentage, 4,944 passing yards, 9.26 yards per attempt, 38 touchdowns, and a career low 7 interceptions. In the playoffs, he's averaged 365 passing yards per game and posted a 7-0 touchdown to interception ratio. Lastly, in the run game, Mack sets the tone in offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan's zone-heavy scheme, a system he learned in Cleveland in 2014. Mack establishes the point of attack with his ability to reach defensive tackles and linebackers. His athleticism creates more space for running backs, and he's able to consistently widen lanes and reach linebackers on combo blocks. So the impact that I hope Mitch Morse can have it really stems from what I just read to you about how Alex Mack impacted that Falcons team and how he was the only thing different from 2015 to 2016. And specifically, obviously, the numbers speak for themselves in terms of how the offense got better, but how much it meant to Matt Ryan that, hey, you've got a guy here in the middle of this offensive line that can handle certain calls, and it really allowed Matt Ryan to fixate his eyes on the defense and on the secondary and how to attack it most effectively. With Mitch Morse, an experienced NFL center that's the highest paid in the game, he should be a top performer, but it's what he can take off Josh Allen's plate that should allow him to focus differently and be more maybe a step ahead in the passing game. Then, of course, the impact on the run game is going to be obvious because Mitch Morse, very athletic, his ability to reach block, his ability to get to the second level will make more space for LaShawn McCoy and Frank Gore and whoever else is going to get the ball for the Bills in the backfield this year. So I think that it's so critical, and I'm very excited to have this for Josh Allen. And on the contrary, how about the Jets? The Jets didn't do anything to improve their center situation. I thought they were going to make a run at Matt Paradis from the Broncos, but they didn't. So that's interesting, and I'm really excited to see Josh Allen kind of get that upper hand when it comes to getting that center position figured out for him in year 2 of his career. All right, the last one here, it comes from the Bills guys. He says, Joe, we know you're a busy man this weekend, but we'd love to have to hear your take on this next week. And this is actually it's a screenshot from an article. I don't know who wrote this. I don't know when it was written, and so I would like to know that before I go too crazy here. But here's the quote from an article sent in by the Bills guys. It says, "I'm just not a Josh Allen believer. I do not think there is an NFL starting quarterback in there waiting to come out and develop. And if I'm wrong, then they've done a lot to give him help. But if I'm right, then they're still in trouble." I don't know who said that. I'd like to know. This is somebody who didn't watch Josh Allen play last year. He didn't watch what Josh Allen looked like over the last half of the season. This is not a player. This is whoever said this is not a person familiar with the work ethic of Josh Allen and what his story is coming from high school to not being recruited to going to community college and everything he did to get an opportunity at Wyoming and what he did with that opportunity at Wyoming and the person and player and leader he's become in a very short period of time in the NFL. So I think that this is a person who's not familiar with those things about Josh Allen that when you put them all together, that's what gives me hope for what Josh Allen can be moving forward, especially with an improved supporting cast around him. I will say this. I understand reservations about Josh Allen. He had concerns coming out of Wyoming that have been very difficult for other quarterbacks to overcome. You think about a very inconsistent in terms of decision-making, inconsistent in terms of mechanics, inconsistent in terms of accuracy, and in a lot of ways, those same things showed up at times last year. So he had a lot to overcome, but what I probably learned from scouting Josh Allen, and I hope this is something I talk about for a long time, is that if you're going to count on a player overcoming those deficiencies, count on a guy with the elite work ethic, with the character and the mindset that Josh Allen has. And if you do the research, the background, even though a lot of people scouting Josh Allen will never get a chance to meet him and get to know him as a person, you can find out this information. It's right there. None of this stuff is new information. And so really digging into the personal side of those things the best we can to forecast the type of worker he'll be in the NFL to take advantage of elite physical traits, right? That was something that nobody ever questioned about Josh Allen was his size, athletic ability, and arm talent. And so when you take that combined with exceptional work ethic and his mindset, you got a recipe for a potentially really good player, one that's worth betting on despite some inconsistencies that have been challenging for other quarterbacks to overcome. Thanks so much for listening to today's podcast. Guys, get your Twitter Tuesdays in for next week. We had some really good stuff this week. We just didn't necessarily have a lot of it. And I know it was the holiday weekend and those types of things. So hit me up. Let's fill up next week's show. Again, the handle is at the Joe Marino. The hashtag is Twitter Tuesday. And, of course, you can send me an email, which is joe@thedraftnetwork.com. So hit me up. Get those in. I want to thank you for listening. And remember, you can subscribe to this show on the new Himalaya Podcast app, as well as Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify. When you get in your car, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Bills. Be back again for you tomorrow with Water Cooler Wednesday. Share, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, and we'll talk Bills again on Wednesday.
This is Locked On Nets. I am your host, Josh Bass.
And I'm Marcus Barahal, your co-host.
And we are the catch-all for Brooklyn Nets news, from game recaps, trade rumors, draft analysis. We do it all I don't think Biggie was referring to podcasting when he said it, but it still applies. Brooklyn?
We go hard.
Thanks for listening to today's Locked On podcast. Want to remind you, your smart speaker can play a Locked On podcast. Just tell your smart speaker, play podcast, and the name of your podcast. I could show you exactly how right now, but then Alexa or Google's likely to do it. So I'll just explain. Say, whoever you're talking to, or whatever you're talking to, play podcast Locked On blank. Have a great day.